Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro reiterated solidarity with China in the face of continued US attacks. Several protests have erupted in different US cities in the wake of the death of an unarmed African American at the hands of the police. South Africa is preparing to resume domestic flights in mid-June when the country moves to level 3 of a 5-level alert system. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro ratified Venezuela's solidarity with China in the face of repeated attacks by the United States government.
The war against China is an unjust, immoral war. Trump's daily attacks against China from Venezuela would reject them, and we are in solidarity with the brother Xi Jinping and the People's Republic of China. China can count on Venezuela, on our brotherhood, on our loyalty, on our solidarity. We are with China in this fight for peace, for a new world. If China succeeded, we, the peoples of the world, can make it. More so if we are united.
The Central Bank of Venezuela has reached an agreement with the United Nations Development Programme to allocate part of the gold deposited in the Bank of England for the purchase of medicines, medical equipment and food to face the COVID-19 pandemic. The announcement was made by Central Bank President Calixto Ortega, who noted that it was agreed that the UN programme would receive the funds directly. The Central Bank of Venezuela filed a claim against the Bank of England before a London court to force it to release $1 billion of Venezuelan gold to help the country tackle the coronavirus pandemic. Ortega said he expects a speedy trial in a few weeks to ensure that the Bank of England hands over part of the Venezuelan gold it holds, which was requested in 2019. Thursday will see a court hearing. The third Iranian oil tanker has entered Venezuelan waters, bringing fuel and other oil products. The ship, called Petunia, was escorted by the Bolivarian Armed Forces after the United States said it was closely monitoring the delivery. Meanwhile, the second Iranian ship, the Forest, has docked at the Paraguaná refinery complex in northwest Falcon State. Two more tankers, the Faxon and Clavel, are on the way to Venezuela. The fleet is carrying more than 1.5 million barrels of oil in total. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the confirmation of 34 new cases of COVID-19 this Wednesday, most of them Venezuelans who had returned to the country from Colombia.
Today they've reported 34 new cases. 2 cases of community transmission, 2 cases of contact with people returning from Colombia, and 30 cases all from Colombia. These are 30 cases that Colombians should have detected on their land because they are Venezuelans who got infected in Colombia. Days and weeks ago, they crossed the border running away from Colombia.
The countries of the Caribbean community are currently preparing to reopen their tourism industries with the necessary protocols to ensure safety for visitors. CARICOM Chair and Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, noted that the tourism industry in the region will resume operations within weeks instead of months. She noted that the required measures will be taken to guarantee the safety of citizens and tourists alike once borders are reopened. She also added that any moves will not be driven by a fixed date, but by protocols. Mottley stressed that tourism is the main economic engine of most Caribbean states, and the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic means great losses for the sector. CARICOM is working to create a common protocol to guarantee public health in coordination with airlines, hotels and the cruise industry, among other sectors. The Americas have emerged as the new epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the World Health Organization. More than 2.4 million cases of the novel coronavirus have been reported in the region and over 143,000 deaths. Latin America has also surpassed Europe and the United States in terms of daily infections.
In South America, we are particularly concerned that the number of new cases reported last week in Brazil was the highest for a 7-day period since the outbreak began. Both Peru and Chile are also reporting a high incidence, a sign that transmission is still accelerating in these countries. For most countries in the Americas, now is not the time to relax restrictions or scale back preventive strategies. Now is the time to stay strong, to remain vigilant, and to aggressively implement proven public health measures.
As Brazil's daily COVID-19 death rate climbs to be among the highest in the world, a study has warned that the total death toll could reach 125,000 by early August. Health officials have stressed that Brazil must follow the lead of Wuhan, China, as well as Italy, Spain and New York by enforcing measures to control the fast-moving epidemic. On Monday, Brazil's 24-hour death toll surpassed that of the United States for the first time. According to the Health Ministry, Brazil registered 807 deaths, while 620 people died in the United States. The Ombudsman's Office of Peru announced that the COVID-19 outbreaks in Brazil and Colombia's neighbouring Amazon areas have forced the country to raise its health alert. The Deputy for the Environment, Public Services and Indigenous Peoples of the Ombudsman's Office, Alicia Abanto Cabanillas, explained to local media that the governments of Peru, Colombia and Brazil needed to develop systematic and coordinated efforts to stop the spread of the coronavirus in the Amazon region. As the deputy explained, the Peruvian administration sent a medical team to the Loreto and Ucayali regions, which have reported thousands of coronavirus cases, but the team doesn't include the necessary specialists and will only spend 2 days in each area. Colombian border regions have reported over 1,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases, and Brazil's neighbouring indigenous communities have reported 91 COVID-19 fatalities. Activists of Argentina's national campaign for the right to legal, safe and free abortion called for a virtual demonstration demanding the approval of the voluntary interruption of pregnancy bill as announced this Wednesday. The campaign stated its intention to host conferences, gatherings and artistic performances on social networks. Activists want to make visible the political consensus surrounding the issue, leading to massive social support for the legalization of abortion in Argentina. The campaign, which organizes collective actions, has been working for 15 years to secure the legislation. Vote counting is still underway in Suriname following elections on Monday. 524 polling stations are being processed to determine whether President Desi Buthelezi, who was convicted of murder, will get a third term in office. Citizens are voting for 51 members of the National Assembly, who will then elect the president. As of Wednesday, and with 87.7% of the ballots counted, the opposition Progressive Reform Party continues to have the lead over Buthelezi's ruling National Democratic Party. More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. South. The mayor of Minneapolis is calling for charges against the white police officer who knelt on the neck of 46-year-old George Floyd, an unarmed African-American, causing his death. The mayor did not specify what the charge should be, but said that his determination was based on the video footage of the incident. The horrifying video spread quickly on social media on Tuesday, showing the officer driving his knee into Floyd's neck as he repeatedly says he can't breathe. Thousands of protesters demanding justice for Floyd gathered at the intersection where he was restrained. They marched to a city police precinct before clashing with officers late on Tuesday. Floyd, who worked security at Conga Latin Bistro, was described as a gentle giant on Facebook. The restaurant posted pictures of him, including one of him smiling at the camera in a security t-shirt. The caption reads, "We will always remember you." In downtown Los Angeles, several hundred protesters also took to the streets and blocked traffic to demonstrate the killing of George Floyd. Black Lives Matter had also planned to demonstrate in front of LA District Attorney Jackie Lacey's office at 4 p.m. to protest in the name of all those who have died in LA police custody. The protesters gathered near Los Angeles City Hall, then marched through city streets before streaming onto a nearby freeway. Traffic on the expressway was lighter than normal because of stay-at-home orders in California due to the coronavirus pandemic. China has expressed its gratitude to the Russian government for its support in the face of the interventionist moves by the United States regarding Hong Kong. The statement comes after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticised Washington for interfering in China's internal affairs regarding legislation for Hong Kong. Spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Xiao Lihan, welcomed the Russian position and noted that the Special Administrative Region of Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the Chinese territory and the national security legislation is a domestic issue and no foreign country has the right to interfere. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo notified Congress that the Trump administration no longer considers Hong Kong as an autonomous Chinese territory and criticized Beijing for updating legislation on national security, including Hong Kong. The Autonomous Special Administrative Region has seen a series of protests, which China has stressed are backed by Washington to destabilize the country. The European Commission has proposed a €750 billion fund to boost economic recovery as the EU registers its deepest recession ever due to the novel coronavirus pandemic.
Today, we face our very own defining moment. What started with a virus so small your eyes couldn't see it has become an economic crisis so big that you simply cannot miss it. In total, the Commission will raise €750 billion for Next Generation EU. Of that total, €500 billion will be distributed in grants and €250 billion in loans passed on to member states.
Spain has started its first day of national mourning for COVID-19 victims as the death toll reached over 27,000 on Wednesday. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, together with other government officials, held a minute's silence at the executive branch headquarters. The official mourning period was approved last week and is set to last for 10 days, marking the longest period of mourning in the history of Spanish democracy. Spain has now reported almost 284,000 coronavirus cases, placing fourth in the world. A British solidarity group has urged the UK government to seek Cuban medical assistance to fight COVID-19. An online petition calls on the UK government to seek Cuba's collaboration to contain the spread of the novel coronavirus and provide medical care to patients affected by the pandemic. The initiative is sponsored by Rock Around the Blockade, which claims that the failed strategy applied by the British Conservative government to fight the virus has resulted in the unnecessary death of thousands of people, including more than 300 health and social care workers. The United Kingdom has reported the fifth highest number of coronavirus cases at more than 267,000, while according to several reports, it has seen over 60,000 COVID-19 fatalities. Less than 2 months after detecting its first case, Montenegro has declared itself coronavirus-free. Authorities have announced that the country no longer has any active cases of COVID-19. Tourism operators have already seized the opportunity to brand Montenegro as Europe's first COVID-19-free country in videos promoting its stunning natural beauty. Slovenia had previously been the first European country to declare itself coronavirus-free, but has since reported new cases. Over the past 10 weeks, Montenegro has recorded about 300 cases and 9 COVID-19 deaths. Since May 5th, there have been no new domestic cases reported.
What is important is that we have not had any new cases of coronavirus for some time, and that makes us soon enough the so-called corona-free country where people could feel safe. In Montenegro, about 75% of the revenue is earned between 1 July and 31st of December. We cannot expect these seasons to be like the previous one, but I believe that it is possible to achieve a much better result than the pessimistic forecasts we had just recently.
And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more.
From here to beyond the South, from here to the Caribbean or further north, where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington, from Mexico, from Caracas, from Quito, from Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South, only on Telesur. Follow our latest updates concerning the novel coronavirus by checking our special content in our website, where you will be able to get the most reliable details and numbers for each continent, available from your mobile device or desktop. Telesur, connecting the Global South.
Welcome back to From the South. South African Airways has said it hopes to resume domestic flights between Johannesburg and Cape Town in mid-June. The state-owned airline is currently under a form of bankruptcy protection. It suspended all commercial flights in late March when the government imposed one of the most rigorous lockdowns in the African continent. But South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Sunday that domestic air travel for business purposes would be resumed in phases after June 1st, when the country moves to level 3 of a 5-level alert system. Cape Town has become the epicentre of the COVID-19 outbreak in South Africa and one of Africa's hotspots. The popular tourist destination at the southern tip of Africa had more than 15,000 cases at the start of this week, and as predicted, it is the city's poor who face the brunt of the disease.
Cape Town, the mother city, a tale of two cities, a place populated by the haves and the have-nots. One that continues to be tainted by apartheid spatial planning and development. These inequalities are now even more visible. % are black and of mixed race, but currently it carries more than 60% of the country and 10% of Africa's total number of cases. This map clearly shows all the hotspots in the city where people live in abject poverty. 26 years after the fall of apartheid, nothing has changed for many living in the city, creating a situation ripe for disaster.
The majority of people live in squalor and live in fairly close proximity to others, and therefore live in high, dense, densely populated areas. The idea of social distancing, of regular hand washing, what the health scientists have called comorbidities, for example, pre-existing diseases like asthma, and we all have family members who have asthma, who have respiratory tract diseases, who have type 2 diabetes, who's obese, who's predisposed to complications like from the COVID-19 coronavirus infection.
Khayelitsha, a shanty town of nearly 500,000, is one of Cape Town's hotspots. A field hospital has been constructed to increase the capacity of Khayelitsha District Hospital and should open by next week, according to Doctors Without Borders. Cape Town is expected to reach its peak of cases around the end of June, while the rest of South Africa is expected to peak around September. According to scientists advising government, South Africa may see between 14,000 to 45,000 deaths by November, and by year's end, some 13 million of South Africa's 57 million people could be infected. Johan Abrams for Telesur in Cape Town.
The government of Ivory Coast has allowed schools to reopen as it eases some lockdown restrictions. Students had to spend several weeks at home since a state of emergency was imposed back in March. In one school in Abidjan, students queued in the yard to wash their hands for the first day of class. The students will also have to maintain a social distance of 1 metre from each other. They're also being issued 10 face masks each. Nigeria's economy grew by 1.87% in the first 3 months of 2020 in comparison to last year. Nonetheless, figures show that the economy shrunk from the previous quarter as oil prices and international trade fell due to the coronavirus pandemic. This marks the slowest quarterly growth rate in 18 months and comes as Africa's largest economy is still recovering from the 2016 recession that saw more than 13 million people lose their jobs. According to experts, this slowdown reflects the earliest effects of the disruption sparked by the global pandemic. The government has said it expects the economy to contract this year by as much as 8.9%. The World Bank predicts the coming recession to be much more pronounced than in 2016 and potentially be Nigeria's worst financial crisis in 4 decades. Lebanese Prime Minister Hassan Diab flew to the south of the country on Wednesday for a meeting with the head of the United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon.
The need for United Nations interim force and Lebanon troops is still necessary and urgent, in light of the Israeli attempts to destabilize South Lebanon and the continued violations of Lebanon's sovereignty by land, sea and air. I am working forward to working with the Lebanese government and particularly the Lebanese army on implementing United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 in full and addressing any unresolved cases.
Iran's president has criticized the United States government in statements during the first in-person session of the new Iranian parliament after 6 weeks of coronavirus lockdown.
With regards to the fight against the U.S. economic war and the terrorism, and recently medical terrorism, we can stand together side by side against their sanctions and their threats and defuse them.
Israeli military authorities have warned that annexation attempts in the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip could trigger violence for which Israeli security forces are still not prepared. General Kamel Abu Rukun, a high-ranking officer of the Ministry of Defense, warned Minister Benny Gantz of the response from Palestinians over Israel's potential annexation of parts of the West Bank. Rukun warned that plans to start the annexation from July 1st would cause a wave of violence and intifada-style attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged on Monday to annex parts of the occupied West Bank in the coming months, vowing to move ahead with his plan despite international condemnation by key allies. And we finish this news brief with a song called Pembalaka, produced by the Playing for Change movement, which believes that music can break all borders. The main goal of this movement is to record musicians in their own environments for a series of innovative videos called Songs from Around the World. And I hope you enjoy the music. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
Wayene, oyo pemba, o pemba pemba laka, o laka laka sinze, moyo monzo, o monzo monzo makube makube mushi, o mushi mushi gato, o gato gaki mene mene kyo suku, o suku suku tea, o tea tea gamba jamama gamba jamata, o mata mata polo, o polo 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 kinama polo mushana polongolo, o polongolo kidi, o kidi kidi suwa, o suwa suwa fungu, o fungu fungu bete, o bete bete kiama, o kiama kiama longwe, kimene kitelemwa, o kimate supe supe, kimate supe supe, kimate supe supe.